and test Zion. I like your picture, by the way, yesterday. Yeah. Test Zion. One who takes out a peddler's basket, though it contains many sorts, is liable for but one sin. Garden seeds less than one equivalent of a dried fig. Rebbe Huda says Ben Sarah 5. Cucumber seeds 2. Gourd seeds 2. Egyptian bead seeds 2. A live kosher locust any size dead. 1 the size of a dried fig, and the bird of the vintages, whether live or dead, any size where they store it in medicinal purposes. Rabbi Yehuda says also one who takes out a live non-kosher locust is liable for any size since they store it as a child to play with. One who stored a seed to be used for sowing or a sample or for medicine or took it out on the Shabbos is liable for any amount. Other people, however, are not liable except for that prescribed amount. For if he changed his mind and brought it in, he is not liable except for its prescribed amount. One who took out foodstuffs and placed them on the threshold, whether he himself subsequently returned and took them out, or whether someone else took them out, he's exempt since he did not perform his work at the time. One who took out a basket which was full of produce and placed it on the outer threshold, even though the greater portion of the produce is outside, is exempt until he takes out the entire basket. And one who takes, oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If somebody takes something into the street, it doesn't matter whether he uses his right or his left hand. Okay, or besoch cheko, if he's carrying it in his chest, like using his arm to hold something close to his chest, or al kasefo, or he carries it over his shoulders. Chayav, all of these are perfectly normal ways of carrying things, and you're only chayav for a malacha that's done in the normal way. Shekain masa b'nei kahas, because that's exactly how the b'nei kahas would carry the implements in the Mishkan.
Mhm.
So why dafka the B'nai Kahas why B'nai Kahas as opposed to B'nai Merari and B'nai Levi, which we just learned in our recent parashios, they carried things on wagons, right?
Uh,
But B'nai Kahas carried things on their shoulders.
no. Okay. All
Okay.
right.
Okay, but Kila Achayado, however, if
By
he
the way, it says objects of extreme sanctity with divine, were by divine decree to be worn on the shoulders.
yeah,
So it wasn't like that. It was easy for
that's,
them to
that's,
carry. They
that's
had.
what, they were carrying the menorah and the aron and the shulchan, all those very holy things that had to be carried by hand. Okay.
Okay. All right.
What happens if he carried something out on the back of his hand, or baraglo, or he was like he was holding it, balancing it on his foot, or befiv, or b'marpeko, he was carrying it in his mouth, or he was carrying it on his elbow, but ozno bisaro, or he hung it over his ear, or stuck it into his hair, or bepundas, or upialamata, or he was carrying it in his punda
Money
is
belt.
wallet. It's a money belt. There we go. Thank you. Um, well, punda saw pialamata, and its mouth was facing downwards. In other words, it was not a good shmirah. Ben punda saw lechaluko. He was holding it between his money belt and his outer garment. Okay, ubisfas chaluko, or he was holding it by on the rim of his cloak, of his
Right.
shirt. Okay,
Right.
minalo, he put it into his shoe. Sandalo, or in another kind of shoe. Patur shelo hotzi kederech hamatzin, because all of these are shinoi. So when you do malacha with a shinoi, it's asur midrabanan usually,
Mhm.
but you're not chayav on it. So this is why very often when you have a necessity to do a malacha, let's say for a chole, for somebody who's in danger, if you can do the malacha with a shinoi, it's better. If you've got to violate a durabanan, if there's like let's say a muktzah, it's if you need to move a muktzah for something, often it's better to do it with a shinoi. I mean, there are places where we don't even need to use a shinoi for moving muktzah, but we'll get into that at another stage. Okay. Um, Mishna Daled Hamiskavein lahotzi lefanav ubalo laacharav patur. So he was intending to carry it out in front of him, and it slipped and moved to his back. So let's say he's hanging something around his neck to carry it out. And he was intending it to be in front of him, and while he was walking, he didn't notice that it slipped around behind him. This is called patur because it's got a lesser shmira than what it had before, and that's basically a shinoi. Acharav ubalu lafanav, but if he was intending to carry it behind him and it slid around to before him, he's chayav because now it's got a better shmira than what he intended, and therefore he would be chayav. Okay, but emes amru, whenever we see be'emes amru, that's like halacha l'moshe misinai. This is gonna be halacha for sure. Ha'isha chalgeres b'sinar. So a woman's wearing an apron. Bein milafaneha, bein milaachareha. It doesn't matter whether she's wearing it behind or in front of her. Chayeves sheken ra'oi lios chazer, because it's designed to rotate before or after, and when she puts it on, it's with the das that it could be either side. Rabbi Yehuda Omer af mekable piskin, and the same thing goes for messengers who take like the scribes of the king, right, who bring letters from place to place. They put one end into they put it into a roll like a roll to protect it, right? A roll a hollow piece of wood, and then they hang it from a belt that they put around their necks, or either from a belt or that they put around their necks, and it doesn't matter whether it's forward or backward, and they
Right.
and they're loosely held so that they can swing around forwards, backwards, doesn't matter. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, same thing goes for these messengers who, if it doesn't matter whether they go forward or backward, they would be chayav for carrying this on Shabbos.
I
Okay.
don't understand why the woman with the apron in front of behind her is liable for you know dressing it for transgressing.
כלומר, שאפילו התכוונה להוציא את הדבר לפניה וצריך לזה. The reason again is because we're not talking about like a normal apron where you put it around your neck and tie it around your waist. That's something that's definitely intended to be in front of you. Okay, but this, I guess this kind of apron is a different design from what we use nowadays. But it's something
Right.
that could that lechatchila, when you put it on, it can slide forward, it can slide backward, and they're not much bit about where it goes.
It's a matter of sneakers also.
Does your commentary say anything
No,
about
I just
the apron?
um. So it just it says that an apron describes an apron. Meiri describes an apron like cloth, one for the sake of modesty to prevent the exposure of the lower abdomen. That's what I thought it was a matter of sneakers. I think that's what the whole thing is. It's around. That's the
Right.
whole
So it's
thing.
okay. So it's like more like sort of the apron that the barber puts on you, which
Right.
just
Right.
it's just like a big round thing, a poncho that can go around you like that. So it doesn't matter whether it's forwards or backwards that you'd be high of on. And it's
They
not.
don't. They don't. Yeah, they don't usually do that for me because there isn't that much that they cut. So they don't. I don't need anything. Okay. Hey.
Chayav. Okay, if somebody takes a loaf of bread into the Rosh Hashanah, obviously chayav. Okay, so now that obvious piece is just leading up into the less obvious piece. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Labrut.
Amen. Thank you. Um, Hotzi'uhu shnayim fiturin. But if two people grasped a loaf of bread and together carried it out into the Rosh Hashanah, for sure they're patur. That falls under the getter of shinoi because you don't need two people to carry a loaf of bread. So if two of them did it together, they would both be patur. Lo yachol echad lehotzio v'hotzi'uhu shnayim. However, if it's a great big loaf of bread that's been built for something like the Guinness Book of Records to show how big you can bake a challah or something like that,
Yeah.
suddenly this has become a normal. That's the normal way to carry it is with two people. Chayavim. Then now they're back to chiyuv. Rabbi Shimon Poter. So Rabbi Shimon holds that it doesn't matter if two people ever do a malacha jointly, even if you need two people to do the malacha, they're always pater. That's just his rule. Um, let me just see if he's got a more of a svara in the commentary. Uh, no, okay. Anyway, halacha does not follow Rabbi Shimon on this point. Hamotzi ochlin pachos mikashir bekli. So if somebody has a shiur, let's say a little Tupperware with half a fig of food
Mhm.
inside the Tupperware. Okay. Pater afala kli. He's even exempt for taking the kli out. Why? Because the kli tfeilalo, because the kli is tafel to the food that's in it. And even though it's an insignificant amount of food, nonetheless the kli was made for food, and therefore the food is the more significant part. And if the food does not take you over the shear for hotzah, then you
Okay.
pater altogether. Okay. Same thing goes, esachai b'mita. You've got a living person inside a bed, and obviously this is not according to Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Shimon would say, you two people carrying something, you'd never be chayav. But a bed has to be carried by two people, and you got a person inside the bed.
Mhm.
So now they take the bed outside. If you carry a person in the Rishus Harabim, you're patur, because a chai noses atzmo. A living person is not considered a masoi no matter what. So if somebody's riding on your shoulders in the Rishus Harabim, you're patur. Okay, but it's a chai. So therefore, if you've got a living person inside a bed and people carried out the bed, patur afalamita. Mita tfeilalo, because the bed is batel to the person who's in it. You're not carrying out the bed, you're carrying out the person, and the bed is just the means of carrying it. It's a mace b'mita chayav. However, if there's a dead body in the bed and you carry the bed outside, that you'd be chayav for, because a mace is not noses atzmo, and if you carried it out, then you'd be chayav for that. V'chein kazayis min ha mace, kazayis min ha nevela, ukadasha min ha sheretz chayav. And the same thing goes for the even a kazais min mace, a small amount of dead flesh from a human, from an animal, or even an adasha
Right.
from a sheretz is considered significant, and you carry that out, you're chayav for hotzah. Rabbi Shimon is poter again. Why is Rabbi Shimon
Right.
poter over here? Not for the same reason as before, because he's saying that this is now a malacha she'ena tzricha lagufa, a malacha that's
Mhm.
not needed for its own sake. Okay,
Right.
when you chayv on a malacha, it's when you do the malacha because you want the outcome from that malacha. So if you do zoreya, it's because you're planting a seed that you want to grow. Okay, but here what you've got is hotzah, not because you want the mace to be in the street, it's because you don't want the mace to be in the house.
Yeah. So that's right. Okay.
Removing something, you're not doing the malacha because you want the mace to be in the street, and it's like the classic case of malacha she'ena tzrich lagufa is if a person is digging a hole. Right.
Okay.
If he's
Right.
digging the hole because he wants a hole because he wants to plant something in the hole, that's malacha shetzricha lagufa, and you'd be chayav on it, and Rabbi Shimon would agree. But if he's digging the hole because he wants the sand, leaving aside questions of muktzah because that's drabanan, but he's digging a hole because he wants the sand, that is patur. Okay, that's Rabbi Shimon comes and says that's patur, and in that case, actually, the halacha does follow Rabbi Shimon.
Okay.
Okay. Back
Okay.
to Shabbos Perik Vav Mishnah Zion.
Zion. She may fasten her other. She may fasten her cloak with a stone or with a nut or with a coin, provided she does not fasten it initially on Shabbos. An amputee may go out with his wooden foot. These are the words of Rav Meir. Rabbi Yossi prohibits it. If he has a cavity for pads, it is susceptible to tumor contamination. His knee pads are susceptible to midrash contamination, and he may go out with them on Shabbos or enter the temple courtyard with them. His stool and his supports are susceptible to midrash contamination, and he may neither go out with them on Shabbos or enter the temple courtyard with them. Masks are not susceptible to tumor contamination, and we may not go out with them on Shabbos. Boys may go out with laces, and princes may go out with bells, and all people may do so, but the sages spoke of the actual custom. Okay. I was thinking when I was looking at this before that I remember when I went to Eastern Europe and I went to the camps, and I think it was Auschwitz or Bergen, Auschwitz. They have rooms where they have like they have 5,000 shoes, and they have rooms with 5,000 glasses. They have all enclosed in glass, but so people could see. I was really amazed by the amount of I just forgot the word. like um, uh, uh, canes and stuff like that. People use like an amputee for their foot. They have, it was the room was filled with them. I never remember any of the pictures. I'm looking all the time at different things that I've seen anyone come off a train like that, with any of those things. But they were filled. I couldn't believe it. It was just, you know. Anyway, that was my trip.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, we have Orla and we have base Yud base. Yosef Abira was one of the disciples of Shammai, and he said, I asked Rabbi Gamaliel the elder when he was standing in the eastern gate, and he said, it never renders forbidden unless it suffices to leaven. Um, right, leaven, okay. And if articles were oiled with unclean oil and were oiled again with clean oil, or if they were oiled with clean oil and were oiled again with unclean oil, Rabbi Eliezer says, I go after the first, but the sages say after the last. And if leaven of truma or kilei hakayim fell into dough, and neither suffices to leaven, nor that suffices to leaven, but together they leaven, it is forbidden to non-priest, but permitted to priest, and Reb Shimon permits to non-priest and to priest. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. If one preserved three vegetables in a jar, Reb Eliezer says one may eat on account of the first. Reb Yehoshua says also on account of the last. Reb Meir says if a species is ended in the field, the species must be eliminated from the jar, and the halakha follows them. Reb Shimon says all vegetables are as one in regard to beer, and one may not, and one may eat portulak until no vetches have ended in the valley of the Netofa. If one gathers fresh herbs until the moisture has dried up, and if one gathers dry until the second rainfall, leaves of reeds and of vines until they fall from their stems. And if one gathers dry until the second rainfall, Rabbi Akiva says all of them until the second rainfall. Likewise, if one lends the house to his fellow and it rains until the second rainfall, if one vows not to derive any benefit from his fellow until it rains until the second rainfall, until when may the poor enter the orchards? Until the second rainfall. And from when may we take use of burn straw and stubble in the seventh year for the second rainfall. Okay.
Taurus.
Okay. Gimel Chet. Not Gimel Bay. Gimel. Regarding a child who was found next to a dough, and there is a piece of dough in his hand, Reb Meir moved the door tahor. But the sages rule the tummy because it's the nature of a child to pat dough. Regarding a dough which has chicken's peck marks, and there is a tummy liquid inside the house, if there is a space between the liquid and the loaves for the chickens to dry their mouths on the ground, the dough is tahor. As regards a cow or a dog, if there is sufficient space for it to lick its lips with its tongue, and as regards all other animals, if there is a space enough for the liquid to dry, if Eliezer ben Yaakov declared the dough tahor in the case of a dog, for it is intelligent and it is not its nature to leave aside food and go to water. If one throws tumah from place to place, whether he throws a loaf among keys or a key among loaves, the loaves are tahor. Rabbi Yehuda says if one throws a loaf among keys, the loaf is tameh, but if he throws a key among loaves, the loaves are tahor. Okay.
One more.
And
It's
I skip one? I'm sorry. Okay.
didn't skip. You could do
Just
one.
a minute. If a sharp was in the mouth of a weasel, the weasel was walking over the bread loaves of truma, and it is questionable whether he touched the loaves or did not touch them. This doubt is Ru Tahor. Okay.
Menachos.
Okay. Dollar base. The bulls, the rams, and the lambs are not essential to one's validity. Reb Shimon says if they had many bulls with no libations, they should bring one bull with its libations rather than offering all of them without libations. The bull, the rams, the lambs, and the goat are not essential to the validity of the bread, nor is the bread essential to their validity. The bread is essential to the validity of the lambs, but the lambs are not essential to the validity of the bread. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Said Shimon ben Nanas, not so. Rather, the lambs are essential to the validity of the bread, while the bread is not essential to the validity of the lambs. We find that when Israel was in the wilderness for 40 years, the lambs were offered without bread. Therefore, now too, the lambs can be offered without bread. Reb Shimon says that halacha follows the words of Bananas, but not for this reason, but for whatever is mentioned in the book of Numbers was offered in the wilderness. And whatever is mentioned in Leviticus was not offered in the wilderness. Once they came to the land of Israel, both these and those were offered. Why then do I say the lambs may be offered without bread? Because the lambs render themselves permissible without bread, but the bread without the lambs is nothing to render it permissible. The Talmud offerings are not essential to the validity of the Musaf offerings, nor are the Musaf offerings essential to the validity of the Talmud offerings, nor the Musaf offerings essential to each other's validity. If they did not offer a lamb in the morning, they should nonetheless offer one in the afternoon. Reb Shimon says, when? When they acted under constraint or unwittingly. However, if they acted intentionally and did not offer the lamb in the morning, they may not offer one in the afternoon. If they did not burn the incense in the morning, they burned it in the afternoon. Reb Shimon says all of it was offered in the afternoon, for the golden altar was dedicated with the burning of the incense, and the ola offering only with the talmud of the morning, and the shulchan only with the lechem upon on the Sabbath, and the menorah only with the 7 lamps in the afternoon. Okay. Chavitim of the Kohen Gadol were not brought by half. Rather, he brings them.
Wait, just a second. That's already for tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, in the Darium.
The dorm. Okay, we have Zion Dalit. Someone who makes a net of prohibiting a house is permitted in the upper story. Permitted the upper story. However, these are the words of Rav Meir. The sages, however, say the upper story is included in the term house. One who makes a net of prohibiting from the upper floor is permitted the house. One who makes a net of prohibiting a bed is permitted the footstool. These are the words of Rav Meir. The Kama, however, say a footstool is included in the term bed. One who makes a net of prohibiting a footstool is permitted the bed. One who makes a net of prohibiting a city is permitted to enter the tchum of the city, but is forbidden to enter the extension. But one who makes a net of prohibiting a house is forbidden from the doorframe and inward. If a person said, Kohen, these fruits to me, may they be Kohen for my mouth, or may they be Kohen for my mouth, he is forbidden whatever is received in exchange for them, and whatever grows from them. With respect to my eating or with respect to my tasting, he is permitted whatever is received in exchange for them, and whatever grows for them. If it's a thing whose seed decomposes, but for a thing whose seed does not compose, even what is grown from what was grown is forbidden. Okay. All right. You daven
And Besorah Tovot.
so was you daven today, right?
No,
You did,
I'm all.
oh, you did. Okay, so you got to run. Okay, I'll talk to you another time. Okay. Have